and welcome to our Google Plus Hangout for Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Today is May 1st, which means it's the first day of AAPI Heritage Month, and we couldn't think of any better way to kick things off than with this Google Plus Hangout with some of our favorite people. So to get things started, I thought what we'd do is just go around and do some quick introductions. With me here in Washington, D.C. at the fabulous Google headquarters are Conrad Ng and Kiran Ahuja. And then joining us remotely are Lisa Ling and Phil Yu. So why don't we just quickly do some introductions and folks can tell us a little bit about who they are. My name is Gautam Raghavan and I'm serving as your moderator for today. I currently serve in the White House as the AAPI liaison in the Office of Public Engagement. Kiran?
Thank you, Gautam. My name is Kiran Ahuja, and I'm the Executive Director of the White House Initiative on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. It's great to be here.
Conrad?
Aloha, everyone, and how's it to my people in Hawaii? I'm the director of the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center, and just thrilled to be doing a Google Hangout with some friends here in Washington and also folks in Los Angeles.
Phil, over to you.
Hey everybody, I'm Phil Yu. I run the blog angryasianman.com, which is a Asian American news culture website. I've been doing about 12 years and really happy to be here.
Great, and then over to you, Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Ling. I'm a happy Asian girl, but I'm a journalist, and I currently host a show on the OWN network called Our America, and I'm also thrilled to be here. Happy Asian Pacific Heritage Month.
Terrific. Well, we wanted to start by talking to you a little bit about the theme for Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and that is I Want the Wide American Earth, an Asian Pacific American story. And we thought we'd have Conrad start us off and tell us a little bit about how they came up with the theme at the Smithsonian and what it means. So Conrad?
Well, thank you. You know, one of the things that Heritage Months do is they provide a focus on some of the great things that make up the American story, the great people, the great stories, the great communities. At the Smithsonian, we produce an exhibition called I Want the Wide American Earth. And some of you may know that title already because it is taken from a poem by Carlos Bulosan, and it's one of his well-known poems that talks about the Asian Pacific American experience, one in which is composed of struggle and fight, but also a deep love of country. And so we use this title to do our exhibition, which tells the Asian Pacific American story. It's on right now at the National Museum of American History, but we thought that this would be a great starting point to theme Heritage Month, an opportunity for people across the land to think about, what makes the best parts of America. And it's our turn right now, the Asian Pacific Americans. I think it's a tremendous story and an important part of the American story.
Absolutely. And Lisa and Phil, I want to make sure you have a chance to weigh in too. So Lisa, why don't you tell us a little bit about what the theme means to you and what the Heritage Month means to you as well?
Well, I'm excited that Asian Heritage Month exists because I'm someone who grew up in a community that was not very diverse at all. In fact, when I was growing up, I actually didn't like being Asian because I looked so different from everyone else. In fact, I have this kind of funny photograph of when I was a little dancer child, and I wanted so badly to not be Asian. When my friends would come over, it would smell like Chinese food, and I just wanted to be anything but different. And so the fact that there is a month that celebrates the incredible achievements of Asians in America, to me, is really exciting. And I also, it's been such an honor for me as someone who did grow up being kind of embarrassed of my identity, because I never really felt entirely American, nor did I feel entirely Chinese, because I didn't know the first thing about being Chinese. So for me, the opportunity to host this show now called Our America, I'm this Chinese American kid from Carmichael, California, hosting this show called Our America, is really exciting and kind of to me, a testament to how things have changed and how things have progressed and how inclusive we've become. So I think it's really exciting that there is a month that acknowledges and celebrates achievements by Asians in America.
Yeah, and I think, Lisa, you said something that a lot of us feel, which is a lot of excitement that this month even exists. And so throughout this Hangout, we're going to ask some of the questions that we received from the public. So Phil, I have a question for you, which is, how do you think we can make sure everyone can see this, APA History Month as nationally visible as Black History Month? What's your thought about that?
Huh. Well, as a guy who runs a blog called Angry Asian Man, I always say every time May rolls around, I say, well, it's Heritage Month, but actually it's Heritage Month every month for me. But I feel like this is a really great time to sort of show the rest of the United States and everybody to share in our culture and really celebrate things. I spend a lot of time talking about a lot of the negative things, a lot of injustices, and just kind of the struggle of the AAPI community. But this is a time to really say, like, we're part of sort of the story of America, right? And I think that speaks to the theme. We're really part of that story, and I hope that people would really be able to see that. And as more sort of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders become visible in American public, and we have pop culture heroes, people in politics, and just moments like this where we can say, we're also part of this American story. I think people will begin to understand, like, there's Asians, there's Americans, there's Asian Americans. We're all Americans, So yeah, I really feel like this is a really great opportunity to educate and really get people into sort of our story,
That's great. And you mentioned at the very end education. And so, Kieran, I'd like to ask you, as Executive Director of the White House Initiative on Asian Americans Pacific Islanders, what are some of the things that the initiative is doing to help educate the American public and educate people here in D.C. about the Asian American story, about Heritage Month, and some of the challenges that we still face?
Yeah, no, I think that's really a large part of what we're trying to do here with the initiative. I just wanted to, point out, because I think, Lisa, what you were talking about with your story really spoke to kind of my own experience. I grew up in the Deep South in Georgia, very few Asian Americans, always like one of few Indian students, and we know we weren't all related to each other at the school, and really feeling like, I was trying to figure out my place in a dynamic that was very different from California, where there are a lot of Asian Americans, or even Hawaii. So I think that really kind of had a huge impact on what I wanted to do and really doing this work. And that's why the work of the initiative really speaks to me. Leading, before coming here, leading a nonprofit organization focused on Asian Americans and understanding how important these issues are. So when the president signed the executive order like 3-4 years ago that created the initiative, he said really eloquently that no community should be invisible to its government. And I think that's a large part of what we're trying to do here in Washington, D.C. This idea that we have a really diverse community. It's growing by leaps and bounds. We have the fastest rate of growth of any race out there, and it's this country is going to be very dynamic and very diverse in the next 10-20 years. It really already is. And so for us, it's making sure that our community can access the resources within the federal government, understand what those services are. And I think for us, it's a large part is dispelling the model minority myth, which is, I think, what Phil was talking about. This idea that, not all Asian Americans attend Ivy League schools. We have real challenges in our community, as well as a lot of contributions that we've made. And I think that's a large part of what the whole theme is about, the white American earth. So, I'll just give you one quick example. We do a ton of different work. We're a very broad initiative, but, one example we like to use is take the struggles of nail salon workers. If you know anything about the work that they do, more than 80% of them are Asian immigrant women or Asian immigrants in California. Almost half are Asian immigrant in this country. And a lot of the issues that they face, from struggles in the workplace, the long work hours, the low pay, exposure to toxins and chemicals, really wasn't reaching the federal agencies. And so a large part of what we did was bring together this interagency working group of all these different federal agencies to elevate this issue to the national level. So that's one example, but you could take that to almost everything, from getting more data and research to promoting language access to working on Filipino veteran issues. That's a perfect example of what we're trying to do with the initiative.
That's great, and I think Karen makes a great point about the importance of telling people's stories and really putting a face on a problem or an issue. So one question we received from the public was, can you describe the importance of telling AAPI stories in an exhibition like White American Earth? That's the question right there. So, Conrad, why don't you tell us a little bit about the exhibit itself and if there's anything that folks who aren't in DC can do to be a part of it?
Well, we're really happy to have this exhibition that's up at the National Museum of American History for the next couple months. It's an exhibition that's going to tour around the country. And basically, it tells the Asian Pacific American story through figures and events that have deeply affected us all and define our history. And my belief is that by focusing on an exhibition, a Pan-Asian Pacific American exhibition, that showcases how there's lots of commonalities in our struggle, in our desire to achieve, and our desire to contribute, and our desire to be part of this country. And that links across the community. I feel that once we put an Asian Pacific American face to that, once we tell the American story through the Asian Pacific American experience, that will arrive at a deeper understanding of America. And I think that's truly needed, because once you understand ourselves and our place in our country, I mean, you truly believe this place is one of inspiration and possibility. So in that exhibition, it has about 30 panels, images, and texts that will go through from the 442nd to struggles for recognition by Native Hawaiians. It talks about the movements by South Asian Indians to pass the Immigration Act in 1965, looks at labor alliances between Asians and Latinos, looks at international adoption, it looks at mixed race Asian Americans, and it looks at how the Asian Pacific American story is everywhere, how it's part of everything that we do in America. And I'm just thrilled that we're able to share it, and why I think I Want the Wide American Earth really captures well this desire to be here and to think of this country as a big home and a big tent for lots of communities.
Yeah, and this month is as much about heritage as it is about the future. So one of the questions that I think folks were dying to know is, what have we as Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, what have we struggled to keep? What traditions have we struggled to keep alive? And what traditions have we let go? And what do we hope the next generation preserves? So here's the question. It's really long, so I just gave the basic parts of it. But Lisa and Phil, I think we'd love your take on that too. Lisa, do you want to start?
Well, just to underscore what Conrad was talking about, I think it is vital to be able to share the tremendous contributions that Asians and Asian Americans have made in this country throughout the decades. I think that we, as a culture, as an American culture, so frequently are quick to celebrate other cultures of other ethnicities, forgetting the fact that Asians have contributed so hugely to the American story. And so I hope that people will go and visit the exhibit. And now we know how adept Asians are at social networking, social media, and on the web. And this is also a unique way for us to share these stories. And I also think that in trying to promote Asian Heritage Month, the question you asked, Gautam, about how we can make it as prominent as African American History Month, I think that so often Asians have kind of sat on the sidelines and haven't really demanded or kind of waited for things to happen. And I think that we need to be a culture that not only demands things, but really continuously tries to promote the need and the importance of Asian Heritage Month. So, Asians generally have had lower voter turnout than other ethnic groups. Fewer Asians have health insurance than other ethnic groups, and I think that we all collectively, because the Asian communities are so disparate and so diverse, need to, because ultimately Asian Americans are a wholly distinctive group altogether, and collectively there's really a lot of power in our collective voices, and I think that that's a message that I think really needs to be conveyed, one of unity amongst all Asians who are American, because the Asian American experience is one that is very distinctive.
And that actually touches directly upon one of the questions we received over Twitter from @KMOK88. The question is, how do we increase the presence of AAPI leaders in media, business, and government? So, Phil, do you want to try and take that one on? It's a big question.
Well, I think for one thing, it's definitely encouraging people to take up those positions. I mean, oftentimes we're sort of kind of pigeonholed into, Asians can only do one thing or another, traditional career goals, which is cool, which is great. I mean, if that is your passion, I think people should definitely pursue that. But oftentimes we don't have enough role models in government, in the media, in entertainment, and to see that when we see that example for us, I think it makes a huge difference to a lot of young Asian Americans. So definitely we should really encourage people to pursue those goals. You know, I can't speak enough about how excited I was to see somebody like Jeremy Lin come to prominence in the last year. And that's, I mean, considering what kind of role model he was to young Asian Americans, people, sports fans, not just Asian Americans, but like sports fans of every ethnicity, you know, to see that was, when I still think about it right now, I get really excited, you know, when I talk about it. So, you know, that's just one example, but I feel like we should really encourage people to take part in all avenues, all industries, all passions, and really go for it, you know?
Yeah, and you know, Lisa, I think you said something earlier about demanding a voice. And one other question we received over Twitter is, how can Asians be bigger voices in their communities as a whole? Not all of us live on the West Coast. And this is from Michelle Lee TV. So we'll love your thought about that. And I think I sympathize, since I grew up on the West Coast and now live in D.C. So over to you.
Well, I think so many of us, because we come from an Asian culture, we've sort of been taught not to raise our voices. I mean, I remember when I was on The View 10 years ago, it was very unnatural for me to kind of insert my voice in a very sort of boisterous way, because I'd always been taught to defer and revere my elders. So it was a little challenging, but I think that things have changed since then, and Asians are increasingly starting to become louder. And I think that's really, you know, as Phil said, we need to encourage one another and encourage other Asians to try to pursue those things that they have always dreamt or wanted to pursue. I mean, there are constantly complaints over the lack of representation in the media by Asians, and I would like to see more Asians actually trying to insert themselves in executive roles. You know, roles can't be written for Asians in many cases, unless in an authentic way, in many cases, unless Asians themselves write them. So to the extent that we can encourage people to pursue those executive positions, or to pursue positions where they actually have influence, I think we need to continue to try to do so.
That's great, and I'm going to use that opportunity to make 2 quick plugs about events that are coming up this month. Sorry.
Ooh, good segue.
Take advantage of the opportunity. One is that at the White House, we're actually hosting an event on Monday where we're honoring 15 Asian American and Pacific Islander women as champions of change. And so these are 15 women who are all over the country who are doing incredible work in their communities, whether it's in sports or health or in the media or in government. And so we hope you tune in. You can watch it on whitehouse.gov/live starting at 1 p.m. Eastern on Monday, or just visit us at whitehouse.gov/AAPI and you can learn more about the event. The other one is one that maybe, Karen, you can tell us a little bit about, which is a forum that we're doing on API heritage at the Department of Interior.
I think it's really timely, and I know, Conrad, you're a big part of what's happening, but through the Department of Interior, the National Park Service, they have actually launched AAPI theme study, which is an effort over, I think, a course of 12 to 18 months to look at our history, our heritage, our culture, all the important parts of our own history and culture that we need to start documenting. And I think this is an effort by the president to really diversify these designations and really show how we have such a diverse history. And I think that's a lot of what Lisa was talking about, of really emphasizing the contributions that our communities have made to this country. So there's going to be an event at Department of Interior on May 9th, on Thursday next week. We're going to have a great lineup of folks, from Tina Chen, who's the Chief of Staff for the First Lady, our new Secretary of Interior, and also what I'm really excited about is that we're going to get 2 performers, John Jang, who's a jazz pianist, and then also Raiatea Helm, who is this vocalist out of Native Hawaiian vocalist from Hawaii. And so I think it's just going to be a tremendous opportunity to celebrate culture and heritage, but also sit down with scholars and hear a little bit about our history and culture.
That's great. And Conrad, are there any other Smithsonian events that you want to tell us a little bit about?
Yeah, we May's full of everything here at the Smithsonian and in the nation's capital. So we open up our exhibition right now. Like I said, at American History. You can learn more about it at our website at www.apa.si.edu at the Smithsonian. We have a family day. It's a two-day celebration on May 4th and 5th. The first one on the 4th takes place at American History, and it's all about the poem itself. It's about literature and using words to express ourselves. So we have a lot of activities centered around that. It's free to the public. On the 5th, on Sunday, happening at the National Portrait Gallery in the Courtyard at which is also the Smithsonian American Art Museum. They will be doing another family day featuring Namjoon Paik, the Korean-American artist who was influential in video art. So those are some of the main things that we have happening in May. In June, we'll have a performance on June 6th based around the late Senator Inouye's life. It's called "Who Is the We in We the People," and it's fighting, with the subtitle of "Fighting Democracy." This will be a free event happening on that evening on June 6th. So visit our website for more information. But it looks at the perspective of what America was like through Asian American eyes, or African American eyes, or the eyes of women during World War II, and taking as its inspiration the life of Senator Inouye, as we all know, was someone who, in spite of the disenfranchisement experienced by Japanese Americans, went on to serve his country and then into the Senate. So those are a few things that are happening this month.
Could I plug one more?
Yeah, actually, hold on one second. I know one part that's been one story or theme that's an important part of Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month is one of immigration. And as you all know, we're in the middle of a great debate on immigration right now. So Phil, I'd love to get your perspective on how you think that conversation's going and what we as AAPIs can do to tell our story, our immigration stories.
Well, I think the story of immigration is the story of America, and Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have always had a hand in that, have always had an important part in that. I'm amazed that this is actually a great time. Heritage Month is always a great time for me to really look at our history, and for me to realize, like, man, I know so little about our history, my history, And so it's a really great time to really explore that and look into that, and our history dates back so much further than I really ever realized, Also want to give out a shout out to my mom, who celebrates 40 years. This year marks the 40th anniversary of my mom immigrating to the United States, and and that's a celebration of everything that has happened with our family since then, in my life, So when I look at immigration plays such an important part in our community, and oftentimes I think people look at Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders and don't really see us having a stake in that, but we definitely do. We really do, and so it's important for us to really see that we have a place in there. We have an important voice in there, and our families really depend on that. So I'm proof of that. So yeah, I can't stress enough how much Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders should pay attention to the immigration debate. Absolutely, and Lisa, do you want to add on to that too?
Well, I agree with Phil. I mean, the immigration story is the American story, and most of my generation, I think of Phil's generation as well, even though he's a bit younger than I am, our parents are immigrants from other countries, and I think when they get to this country, they come with such hopes and dreams of pursuing the most idealistic American life and wanting the best for their children. And the reality is that the immigrant experience, while people come from so many different parts of the world, ultimately they want one thing, and they want the American dream. They want to pursue the things that the idea of America encompasses. And I think that this is a really great month for us as Asian Americans to allow ourselves to reflect back on our family's own experiences. And I'm heartened by the fact that I think this country is starting to move in the right direction and trying to be more sympathetic to the struggles that immigrants have once they get here, and the idea that when they come here because ultimately they all want what we all have, which is the opportunity to live the American dream.
Yeah, and you know, one thing I'm really excited about this month is we're going to have a whole blog series on whitehouse.gov/AAPI about AAPI immigration stories. So Karen, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a large part of what we're talking about of why immigration is so important to all of us. And really, you know, like Phil was mentioning, that there really is, I mean, it's a large part of our experiences as Asian Americans. And I think oftentimes that doesn't get a lot of fanfare in the national media, and just really the diversity of immigrants. And so part of what we're doing is highlighting stories on whitehouse.gov. So there's one story up there that's really touching by Hector Vargas, one of our commissioners, who talks about his mom, who came here a number of years ago and worked as a nurse for many, many years, and just the great work that she did. And what that means to him. And I know that we'll be having a lot more of those stories throughout the month. And I really want to encourage all of you. I mean, there's an opportunity for you to share your story with all of us here at the White House. So I really hope you do that, because that is a large part of speaking out, of talking about the diversity of these experiences. Because I know for our community, that really is what the whole immigrant story is about, who we are. So.
Well, you know, I also have to say.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I also think it's a great opportunity to open up the dialogue between the generations. I mean, it's really touching to hear Phil talk about celebrating his mom coming to this country 40 years ago, because the circumstances under which so many of our family members came here are so fascinating and so interesting, and it's the perfect time to open up that dialogue and find out about those challenges and to find out about those hopes, because we'll find, I'm sure, that there are a lot of similarities. My grandmother came to this country in 1948, and she was telling me she came on a boat, and the immigration official who was in charge that day was extremely racist, and he would detain all the Asians. So she was kept in this facility with all these other Asians for days, and none of them were, there were maybe a handful of them who were educated. So my grandmother, who was one of them, sort of spoke out on behalf of all of the Asians who'd been detained. So there are these incredible stories of strength and courage under incredible duress that so many of our family members who came to this country have, and I think that they're empowering to learn. So I encourage people to check out these efforts that the White House has underway, because I think that we can all find so much inspiration in the stories of other Asian immigrants.
You know, I think that's really true, and it occurs to me that not only do our immigration stories bind us all together, I think something else that binds us all together is food. And I'm not going to lie, one of my favorite things about Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month is lots of good food. So I'd love for all of you to share what your favorite foods are. And Karen, I know that we have something really exciting happening with My Plate. Do you want to tell us about that too?
Yeah, really quickly, and then we can talk about like what our favorite foods are. It's like really important. We're going to be launching a My Plate video with White House chef Chris Comerford and Chef Ming Tsai. It's a really cute, funny video that focuses on Asian cuisine, but it's tied to the U.S. Department of Agriculture's My Plate icon, which is about dietary guidelines of the kinds of foods we should be eating, but we don't have to sacrifice our own foods to eat in a healthy way. So that's going to be launched later this month, and so definitely check it out. Okay, so my favorite food?
Your favorite food.
Okay, so I have to say, you know, I'm from the Sindhi community in India. We are known to not be super healthy eaters. And so, and what's interesting is I really didn't connect to that until I went back to India, probably like when I was 24, 25, and they're like, oh, you act just like a Sindhi, and I'm like, oh, what does that mean? Because I didn't really know. And so, but anyway, so I love sweets and I love fried foods, and so there's, you know, in Indian food, there's chaat, like all the street food that you can't eat on the street in India, but my aunt used to make for me in the house, just so I wouldn't be deprived of that whole experience.
Well, I agree with you. Phil, what's yours?
Well, I gotta keep it real. I mean, I love Korean food. And I live in LA, which is like, you know, the mecca for Korean food in the United States, I think. But I gotta say, nothing beats, and I gotta go back to my mom, but nothing beats coming home to a good home-cooked meal. And my favorite dish is a soup called tteokguk. It's rice cake soup. It's like the simplest, really comfort food, but every time I come home, I gotta have it, and I love it. So it's a little slice of home for me.
That sounds good to me. And for me, it's anything Thai, basically. Anything. I'll eat it. Lisa, what about you?
I can't give you one favorite food. I mean, if I could eat different kinds of Asian food every day, I'd be a very happy person. It's funny, my husband is Korean and I'm Chinese, but he loves Chinese food and I actually prefer Korean food. So between the two of us, we actually get a lot of it in. But you know, I like anything really, really spicy. And fortunately, there is a lot to choose from in the various Asian culinary worlds.
And Conrad, what about you?
Well, you know, you're right about food. It's something that people can talk about across cultures. But I think for Asian Americans, it really is a history of our arrival in America and our story and experience. We have a part of the exhibition we talk about food, and you know, the ways in which food tastes is usually available through the region. So there are regional differences that weave our story into the regions in which we live. You look at the kinds of occupations we were allowed, Asian Americans were allowed to occupy in restaurants, and happen to be one of those places that Asian Americans made a living, and it's part of this larger story of America. You know, for the Smithsonian, one of the things that we're looking at is the intersection of using food as an intersection between Asian Americans and Latino communities. That's a future initiative that we have going on. But food is, you know, it's something that's easy to talk about, but it happens to be a window into a more complex understanding of our history.
You're so right. You're so right, Conrad. And now there's such a plethora of Asian food that you can find almost anywhere in this country. But when you think about the early pioneers, early Chinese and Asian pioneers in this country, you know, my grandfather, for example, was one of the first Chinese educated in the United States. He had an undergraduate degree from NYU and a master's in economics from University of Colorado. But when he came to this country, he couldn't get hired in his skill set because he was Asian. So what do? They opened a Chinese restaurant. And when you think about Chinese restaurants, they are so ubiquitous. I mean, Chinese restaurants are as ubiquitous as McDonald's are in many parts of the country. And you can go somewhere, you can go to like Springfield, Missouri. And when you ask people, okay, what should I go get to eat? And like the most, you know, the whitest white person that you encounter will say, go get cashew chicken. And I'll say, why? I'm Chinese. Why would I want to go to Springfield and get cashew chicken? And he's like, trust me, our cashew chicken is different. But it's their take on, you know, the Chinese cashew chicken. Or there is no cashew chicken in Chinese food, but it's their take on Chinese food, and it's quite endearing.
Yeah, we've done, the Smithsonian did an exhibition, which is part of what we featured on Chinese food. And you think that there actually, when you think about it, there are actually more Chinese restaurants than there are McDonald's. And if you look at articles, particularly ones about Washington, they always say, well, at late night they broke for, not for pizza these days, but for Chinese food. But getting back to my love of food, you know, I have to think about my parents, and I think for them, you know, they think the best thing ever invented was the Chinese buffet, you know, the ubiquitous buffet where you get, you know, kind of it smells the same, it's always the same kind of food, and to them it's a good deal. so we always would go, and that always would make me think of home. So that became endearing.
Okay, way to be stereotypical, Conrad.
Just my parents. Just say my parents.
So I know we're beginning to run out of time, so I thought what we could do to help close things out is to really go back to the theme of this month, which is I Want the White American Earth, which is really about aspirations and dreams for America. So I would love for each of you to share what your dream is for the API community and for America moving into the future. So why don't we start with Conrad?
You know, that's a good question. I think about it in terms of why I came to the Smithsonian. And, you know, as most people want as they come to Washington, but a lot of people, once in your life, you'll say to yourself, you know, I feel like I want to do something big. I want to try to, you know, change the world or improve the community around me. And I realized that part of that effort is looking back at our history and thinking about how we can rethink our understanding of ourselves, our culture, our history, if we put a different gloss on it, if we put a different community, and how that would build a different sense of empathy and the hope by understanding ourselves deeper, by telling America's whole story, that we'll have a stronger sense of country. So that's my hope, is to be able to continue telling and supporting all the initiatives that go to telling America's whole story, from what's happening at the interior with our national parks, what's happening at the Smithsonian, but also communities across the country, historical societies to museums. Our voice is so important, and I think just telling it enriches this country.
Phil, what about you?
Well, that's a big one. I think what I'd like to see happen is just for us as a community to deepen our conversation with the broader sort of what we understand as America and engage with that. I think that oftentimes we're so focused on, you know, my blog is focuses a lot about a lot of negative things like racism and hate crimes, but it also focuses on our celebrations, our triumphs, our heroes, you know, and I'd like for that all to be sort of encompassed in this wider American story. I think a lot of times we can be a little more insular and we can separate ourselves by putting the label Asian American and Pacific Islander. But you know, I talk about things because I love America. You know, I am American, right? And so I'd like for our community to really engage on all levels, on all the things that we've talked about today. But, you know, in the avenues that we pursue as careers, and the way we engage politically, just to be more active. And I feel like that's in that way. You know, it broadens the sort of everyone's understanding what the American story is. So I'd really love for us to become more integral part of that within ourselves, the way I see ourselves and the way everyone else sees us.
Karen, what about you?
Yeah, you know, I think when I think about the theme and what we're trying to do with the initiative, you know, a large part is expanding our notion of what is American. It's really what we've tried to do, I think, individually in our own experiences and trying to find that place. I think that's been my kind of long journey in all of this is what's my place in this country and what are my contributions, and I think so, you know, what we're doing within as part of the initiative and what the president feels so strongly about is that education component within government about who makes up America, and that Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders are a really important component and part of our population, and that we have to understand who they are, not just in the abstract, but, you know, fundamentally who they are, from the Hmong Americans in Minnesota to the Vietnamese fishermen to talked about the nail salon workers around this country, to the small business owners. I mean, if you think about what drives our country, it's a lot of these Asian immigrant business owners, and I think a large part of that is the education. I think it's important what Phil and Lisa are doing, because they're a part of that education, not only in who they are and the fact that they're out there, but also talking about these issues. And so I think, you know, I think it's great to talk about the contributions, and I think that's an important part. But I think, you know, I have this slant of also, you know, with my former advocacy hat on as well, is like, you know, really understanding what the issues are that impact our community and what can we do about it, and how as government we can be responsive. So I'm just going to continue to trudge away in the work that we do this month. It's an opportunity to highlight that work, you know, to celebrate, I mean, just this amazing history and diversity and how we take advantage of it, and what that growth means for us, but also really like the bullhorn out there about, you know, what more we could be doing to support these communities. So.
And Lisa, what about you?
Gautam, you asked what is my dream for the Asian American community. It's the same dream that I have for America, and I'm going to be 40 this year, and I'm hoping that I live for at least another 40, and my ultimate dream, and the idea of it makes me emotional just thinking about it, is to one day see the first Asian American president of the United States. And to fulfill that dream even more, she would be a woman.
Wow, you laid down the marker now, so get to work, folks. And I'm going to answer my own question, which is, you know, I think every day I feel like I'm living that dream. You know, who thought like a kid who was born in India and grew up in the Pacific Northwest would get to work for the President of the United States, who we could argue was the first Asian American president. But just in terms of closing thoughts, let's just go around one more time and as by way of saying goodbyes. So Conrad, you want to close us out?
Well, I just want to say thank you so much, everyone out there, for tuning in. Thanks for colleagues of mine. I mean, it's being able to be on, participate in a Google Hangout with Gautam, Kieran, Lisa and Phil, who I also know as friends. And I always think that is something significant because we all want the same thing, and we're all doing it in our own ways. And just by having that conversation, knowing that there's a colleague across the country or a colleague across the city who cares about the same thing is really powerful. So I just want to say thanks everyone for participating in this. Come visit our show and come visit us online. There's lots of amazing things happening, seriously amazing things happening at the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center.
And Karen?
Well, I want to thank Conrad and the Smithsonian for partnering with us and being and really kind of putting this all together. I am the least savviest of social media, so I appreciate being a part of this very elite group of folks. So one, I just wanted to plug, an amazing week we're going to have here in Washington, D.C., May 6th through 10th. Wanted to also emphasize this national movement we're really pushing around the white American earth and that theme. And so if you're doing events in your communities, please let us know about it. Go on to whitehouse.gov/AAPI to let us know what you've been doing. It's really going to inform the work we continue to do going forward. And then, of course, because I'm the least savvy in social media, I'm going to plug my Twitter account because I need to. I have this very personal competition with some of the administration folks. So Karen Ahuja AAPI. So definitely follow me. And finally, I just want to say a real thank you to everyone for everyone's hard work and just all the great events that are out there, all the celebrations that are going to go on this month. They're really so inspiring. We have so many leaders to acknowledge, from late Senator Inouye to so many others, and it's just really going to be an exciting month. So I'm looking forward to it.
And Phil, what about you?
I want the white American Earth. Yeah, I just want to thank you guys for inviting me and letting me be a part of this conversation. It's really fun. Everyone out there, I'm all about stories, so take this month, this opportunity to tell your story, hear someone else's story, and let's all make friends together. Use this opportunity to strengthen our community. You can find me at angryasianman.com or on Twitter at angryasianman, and stay angry.
But not too angry. And then Lisa, why don't you close us out?
Just want to applaud Conrad, Gautam, Karen, and Phil for continuously trying to raise the profile of Asian Americans in this country. And to those who are watching today, I hope that the conversation that you have seen or listened to today has inspired you to raise your voice and to possibly get engaged if you're not already engaged in also trying to raise the profile of the Asian American community, because it's really a special one. And thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. My Twitter handle is just @LisaLing, so if anyone wants to tweet me, I'd be happy to engage. But thank you. It's been really fun.
Well, thank you both. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Phil, for joining us remotely. Thank you, Karen and Conrad, for being here. Happy Heritage Month, everybody. We'll do this again, and enjoy your day.
Happy Heritage Month.
Bye. Thanks.